this theme of this next conversation is going to be a revolutionizing, easy for me to say, HR in the age of AI, where we need to look at our need to upskill, reskill, and keep pace with the exponential rate of change. Now, if you joined us right off the hop to begin the day, you saw the CEO of Betterworks, Doug Dennerline. Well, he's going to be coming back and leading us in conversation and looking at how AI can help us unlock new possibilities when it comes to employee insights, when it comes to engagement and strategic decision-making. And joining Doug on the virtual platform today, two very special guests, the Global Talent Program Manager at Colgate-Palmolive, I'll get it right by the end of the day. Bennett Price, and Senior VP of Talent and HR Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Extreme Networks, Kimberley Basnight. So if we could, please welcome our special panelists to the stage, and let's talk about the revolutionizing of HR in the age of AI. Doug, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Riaz. Much appreciated. Yeah, this is an exciting session for me. I will tell you, early on in the birth of AI, I've been going very hard in my organization trying to innovate as much as possible, everywhere as much as possible, because I see this as I said in the opening comments, that this is a game changer, I think, for industry, in every industry, and especially, as I said, in HR. So, what we want the sessions to be is just a conversation about how HR people are thinking about this, and a couple of our great customers here, Bennett and Kimberley, thanks so much for joining us. And, maybe Kimberley, you could kick us off with kind of, how is Extreme Networks, not you, but Extreme Networks, thinking about AI in their business?
Absolutely. And Doug, thanks for the opportunity today. This conversation is top of mind for many of us. As a technology company, Extreme Networks, so we are, first of all, getting smart at the leadership level and the board level about AI technology. So I think we're starting there with getting smart and understanding the breadth of the impact, right? I think I'd say secondly, we're starting to, of course, integrate this in our own technology, but on the human side, from an HR perspective, we've already started to, I call it, dip our toe into this thing. We've started looking at our talent and recruitment area and things that we can do to help up-level and take our job descriptions to the next level, if you will. Most of these are still, there's still some level of oversight by humans, but we are leveraging AI technology for job descriptions. And then some of the sourcing, we're going to start looking at leveraging some applications out there in the AI space to help with some of the sourcing of talent. The other area that we've already seen dividends is onboarding, and so we've implemented a AI application for onboarding our new talent. It's going over very well. We're almost done deploying this globally, and I think we've already seen about a 30% uplift in the productivity of the process end to end, and then thinking about making it simple and easy to use and how quickly we can get new employees onto Extreme's platform. So we're already seeing the dividends from it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Bennett, how's Colgate-Palmolive? I mean, 200-year-old company, are they embracing AI?
Yeah, it's a journey, right? But yeah, I'd say Colgate, rich history, long history, and there's different pockets of the business that are embracing it, some a little bit faster than others. Right, you see some, cost savings, some efficiency things in like supply chain as an example. But when it comes to large learning models and stuff like that, we've had it in learning as an example, right? In terms of content development, everything else. We've started to pivot a little bit even in training, right? And creating training using AI. Probably one of the most recent ones is designing our bots, right, internally, which are, probably most recently, we've designed a bot, right, to help with objective setting. It ingests what you want, in terms of, how you would set an objective, everything else, what do you want to say? but it can ingest things like your code of conduct. It can ingest, your stance on DE&I, right? It can, and it can ingest these things in a way that elevates manager capability, makes objectives smart, right? Very difficult to break, right? And starts to eliminate some of the bias, right? So if I say, hey, Doug, I don't like you. I want to set your objectives, so that I'm going to essentially, push you out of the organization. I'm going to do something that violates our code. It will come back and say, no, you can't do that. Here's why. Here's how you should actually handle performance and everything else. So it ends up being not just a way to set objectives in a smarter way, but it also is a coach along the way in terms of how do you raise the bar for manager capability and actually teach managers to do what they should be doing in a better way, but without having them sit through a training or try to chase them from an HR performance management standpoint.
Yeah, that's great. Just maybe for educational purposes for people, a lot of people on the call, sounds like Colgate has made the investment of using a private version of a large language model internally. So what that means is, even though your employees might be going out and using free ChatGPT 3.5, but when they do that, they're training that large language model with whatever data they put in it, versus when you have a private version of it, it's not teaching anything but your version of that model. So it's, it's what companies are doing to be safe. And so that's incredible to me that they've already made these steps, done this work, because it is one of those great things that you can do to, reduce bias, right? And I'm wondering, how would the executives of the company I ask this almost of everybody, because what we find out there is executives are either all in or they're tentative and they're waiting for somebody else to do it first and kind of understand what does responsible AI mean, and worried about that kind of stuff. On a scale of 1 to 10, where's your I'm leaning in, the executive team?
Can we go? Yeah. So Colgate in 200 years, it prides itself on innovation, but can be a little bit slower in some areas in terms of culture change. So from an executive, senior leader standpoint, I'd say, our leadership is definitely, they're curious, right? They know from a business landscape that to remain competitive and to really make this shift into this new world, they need to know, and they need to embrace, and this idea of AI or Gen AI. They don't always understand it, right? But I think the most important thing is that they're laying the groundwork and expectation, that the Colgate as a company, our employees, we need to be curious. We need to be embracing this. We need to come with plans and ideas that then they can vet, right, in terms of moving the organization forward. So, conservative, definitely forward thinking and embracing and open to how we do things.
Yeah, and Doug, I would say for us, we are leaning all the way in. I would say that, we stood up I would call it a tiger team 6 months or so ago. And so we've actually identified use cases throughout the company where we'd be able to leverage AI, and we actively have projects that are running throughout the company. So getting smart first, understanding the ethics of it, and then understanding the potential risk, partnering with IT, but also I think we have a number of projects running throughout the company internally right now around AI and exploiting that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We've done the same thing here at Betterworks, even to the extent that on a quarterly basis, we give a cash award to an individual or a team that's come up with a way that they have embedded AI into some process inside the company. And the woman who won it last quarter, reduced the amount of time it takes for us to write scripts to test our software, QA scripts, test our software, from 14 days to 4 hours. So wow. AI now writes the scripts, and so we're using it to develop software, to do QA on our software. So very innovative ways. Can I ask you a big question that is out there for people? how do you feel about AI writing performance reviews for people?
I'll let Bennett answer that one first.
Well, so I'd say optimistically cautious. How's that? Yeah. Listen, I think so. Maybe I'll approach it from performance management in general, right? So, performance management is a process everybody loves to hate, right? There's a little bit of pain. There's, it's give you transactional stuff like that. I think and that goes against the intention of performance management when done well, is significant enabling, process, right? I think anything that we can do to ease the pain or the burden associated with some of these processes, while also maximizing the impact it can have, is a good thing, right? So if it's helping to find objectives, if it's helping to summarize feedback or develop an action plan for development, right? Or if it's helping to monitor progress against objectives and the conversations that arise, right? And then tying that development together. I think those are all great things. At the end of the day, a manager still needs to be capable and do something with that information, right? But and obviously have oversight of it, right? It's not just AI, cranks out something, you save it as a year-end summary or something like that. But I think it can be a significant enabling function. And the way I also look at it now is, manager capability is shoddy, right? It's never consistent. You have good managers, you have bad managers, and everything in between. Anything that you can start to put in place that raises the overall capability and the overall bar for manager capability, so that you're actually having more robust conversations, you're actually managing performance, you're driving more of a performance-based culture, I think is a good thing, right? But again, this idea of oversight, and the utility of the information is immensely important.
Just adding to Bennett, I think that AI is going to be an incredible partner in this space, in this performance management space. And I think for us, it's about performance enablement and unleashing, to Bennett's point, that next level of capability and capacity from our people, right? So I think leaning into AI and data will serve us quite well. When we think about the manager that's sitting down to have a performance conversation, having an AI partner that has equipped them with that conversation by looking at maybe the last 3 conversations and looking at that employee holistically and serving up a narrative that manager is now equipped to have with the employee, to me, that's the next level of performance engagement and performance management. And I think that's what AI can bring to the table.
Well, the good news for U.S. customers, that's all coming. Everything you just talked about is being built into the product today. Actually, Kimberly, I did an interesting thing. I test lots of models, Claude, Bard, ChatGPT, 354. And I'm very curious about this technology because I do think it's a game changer. And I went out and asked each of them, I'm getting ready to have a conversation with this person. They tend to be difficult to work with. I get some feedback from, as their manager, from others that they're difficult. How can I have a good conversation with this person to give them that feedback? In 30 seconds, I printed out a 10-point plan for me to have that conversation with them. I mean, it's going to be the best HR business partner on the planet, and we'll provide that bot over time. The other thing that will come over time, and we're rushing to this, is having Chat GPT or whatever private version. Ours is a private version of Chat. Is being able to look at the qualities in your culture of an individual manager whose people seem to be thriving the most. Mm-hmm. And what are those interactions that manager is interacting with them with, saying these seems to be the qualities that are thriving in your culture. And on the other side of that, be able to pull out where they see turnover and people not doing well, and be able to identify the qualities of that manager and being able to give them on maybe a performance plan. The other one I thought about in my days at Cisco Systems with a huge company is we used to look, we'd open a job opening and 90% of the time we'd have to go outside because we couldn't find the right person internally with where we're going and where the industry's going, you'd be able to have a profile and a succession plan and career plans in this application that you just type in a window, I need somebody with these 12 skills and speaks these 2 languages and is willing to go to this location. And it'll pop up the 5 people in the company that are most qualified to do that right now. How powerful would that be? Can you maybe talk a little bit about other ideas that you've thought about as you see this technology and where it might really play a role?
Kimberly, you want to take?
Yeah. So I think that there's a number of things here. So other things that I've been thinking about is the employee experience. Here we are on the back end of a pandemic, and it's changed the way we work. It's changed the future of work forever. I think we have an opportunity to look at the employee experience, the life cycle, soup to nuts, from the time they join a company to the time they leave us, right? And leveraging AI, think about how can we up level the experience. So if we understand things like employee sentiment, we understand engagement scores historically, and we understand the employee, everything about that employee. Thinking about the next level for me is, how do I, having knowledge of all of that data, up level the employee experience and begin to personalize the experience for the employee, whether they're hybrid or remote or assigned to an office. To me, that is something that's top of mind for me, is thinking about all of the data that we now have at our fingertips. How are we going to up level that experience?
Yeah, that's great. Bennett, any other thoughts?
I like what Kimberly's saying, and I'll come in from a very similar angle, which is, the promise of 10, 15 years ago, right, with a lot of these technology and systems, with the idea of bringing a whole employee together in a sense, just never materialized. It wasn't there. You have LMS, you've got your recruiting systems, you've got rewards. That's usually separate. I think where the industry is now headed and what AI affords us is the opportunity to really bring that together in a holistic, integrated way, right? So if you're talking about performance, all of a sudden you're linking to to learning and what you should do. That it ties to your development plan. It's routing up into your succession. From a strategic workforce planning standpoint, what capabilities you have or skills that you need, where it is across the organization, right? Yeah. And then you can start to think about pay differently. So I draw back to the promise of, yesterday, I think is really here today. And I think companies are now starting to race to do that. But hitting squarely on Kimberly's point, we're no longer learning. We're no longer talent acquisition. We're no longer, total rewards. These silos that we created because sometimes these are the systems and processes we manage, to one holistic model that actually talks to each other, right? Shares data, and it's all for the benefit of the actual employee and the employee experience.
Yeah, that's really well said. Just some thoughts here, because I'm looking at the chat and it's important, the way that we're thinking about it is the AI is your co-pilot. It's not the pilot, it's the co-pilot. And we're already delivering this in writing conversations, for quarterly conversations for feedback. It's writing, if it's, either scheduled feedback or ad hoc feedback. It's creating goals for people based upon your goals, your manager's goals, the top company goals, your job title, and coming up and writing it correctly so that it's actionable and the goal makes sense. In calibration, it's looking at your body of work versus a debate in a room with 3 other managers on why people should all be in the 9 block. The AI will say, based upon the body of work in the last 12 months, that person should be in the 6 block. And now you can calibrate or debate that. It's just that the things that it's going to be able to do, Bennett really well said, is so broadly across the board. And the other one we think about that I'm driving the team to is, it's not so much the individual, it's the managers, where I think a lot of large enterprises have incredible weakness. We throw really good people into management jobs and we say, good luck. and it's to say, hey, Bob, Mr. Manager, you have 5 direct reports. They all have these 7 goals in the application. These 2 people don't look like they're making any progress on those. You should reach out and have this conversation with them. Right? I mean, it's going to lead them to potentially be a much better leader than they would normally be, because we'll feed them the information around how to do that. And so, and then again, in HR in the background, we'll be able to look at the qualities of these people and find out where the good ones are and where the good ones aren't, equally so. Yeah. So again, really passionate about all of this and where it goes. But I do think there is still a fearfulness of that. I did see one of the questions, and it brought up the fact that Jack Dorsey, it's not that he eliminated reviews, he eliminated PIPs. And I wonder if there is some use, I thought to myself, well, he's going to need a good lawyer or a band of them. But you probably could do a much better job of managing performance and the PIP process with the intelligence you would get from AI. I haven't really thought about that. Any thoughts?
Well, so funny enough, we're having some internal conversations about just this the other day, which is, with my team and I just thinking of different use cases for, AI, because we're spearheading a lot of what's going on. And that one of these came up, exactly what you're talking about, this PIP process, which is, you've got, HR running out there essentially recreating these processes, and in some cases doing it very inconsistently. How great would it be to start from a solid foundation, accelerate the process, right? Be able to summarize interviews, be able to put together plans, right? Or just more automatically based off of the information that's coming in, and with certain guardrails in place, I think is a brilliant use case. But, a lot of the stuff in HR is transactional anyways. So AI, moving more in or operating more as a co-pilot, takes it from that being so heavy on the transaction piece to really what HR should be, which is a strategic business partner, a true strategic business partner, and an employee advocate, right? The voice of the employee, versus being mired down in the details of, all the other stuff that HR ends up doing. Yeah.
I'm really excited about that part of it, because, I've had lots of very senior HR people by my side for a very long time. I probably went through, for whatever reason, the head of worldwide HR at Cisco loved to give the brand new HR person to me and my 6,000 person sales team. And so, and one of the reasons I'm in this job is I see how powerful a good HR person by your side can be when they're your strategic partner, when they understand the business, not just, are doing tactical HR stuff, trying not to get sued and, being the no, but saying, hey, Doug, you know what, we're going here and you have a team of 10 direct reports. These 3 people are not going to get you there, and hold a mirror up in your face. And, that's what I'm looking for from someone. And so I think AI is going to free you up because I know that's what you want too, is to be able to become, a key critical partner to the future of the company. I just wanted to comment on one of the questions that was out here, and it says AI can help with IQ, but it can't help with EQ. And, I don't want to be controversial, but I would argue with that the models have become incredibly high EQ very quickly, and write in a really wonderful language around humanization and people in a way that's become pretty amazing. And so I think, as much as people think it'll never do that, I think it's becoming better and better and better, and it's just going to continue to get better around sounding like a human being. And imagine taking these processes that take people up to, we estimate it's 5 weeks of work for a manager with 7 direct reports, down to literally a day, and giving real feedback. That's removed all the stuff that was in the way before, because they made it up the night before they had the conversation. It's exciting.
Right. Yeah, and I think, Doug, to your point, one of the things that I've seen is that those managers that you mentioned, those leaders that were moving into leader roles, that are very good in the technical space, but that skill set is not there on the people side, the people leadership side. I think that the EQ is the number one thing that we need to solve for there. And I think AI can help us with that, to your point. The other thing I was thinking about, not to go down a rabbit trail, is I think this is a huge ocean for us all to boil. And I think the thing that helped us is that we really started to think about smaller use cases that we could solve for. And we knew we had to start somewhere. And so we really started small and we built on from there. And I think that's the thing that I would encourage, is that we all walk away today, if you're doing nothing in this space, that you start by identifying what are those 2 or 3 use cases that you could see that would pay dividends and improve productivity for your team, and start there, versus trying to like identify, everything at once.
Yeah, I'd echo that 100%. It's very similar to the skills debate, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Trying to become a skills-based organization. It doesn't happen overnight, and I think you've got to build that momentum. Same thing around the use cases. If you can get it in, the objective thing that I discussed, earlier. Excuse me. It's a perfect example. While there are pockets of AI enabled that are happening across the different businesses, what we did with the objective bot, that was the first enterprise-wide global application of AI Colgate has ever done, right? But it wasn't easy. It was fraught with tons, with chief legal, where chief data officers were negotiating with work councils, right? Nobody had done this on a global scale, and we were just all figuring it out at the same time. And so, there's also a lesson in that too, which is sometimes I think coming with and saying, hey, I want to apply AI to, I don't know, job architectures, right? You would get, oh, no, we can't do that. Versus, doing some of the legwork or doing some of the thinking and exploring and kind of crafting maybe a proposal of sorts, but starting to work through some of those challenges, I think helps accelerate things too, right? So, yeah.
I've been asked a lot in the press, what's it going to do to jobs? People are worried about, it's going to replace jobs. And, the way I think about that is, as a CEO, is it does make people more productive. There is no question, and I would encourage everybody, if you're not coming up with a way in your daily usage of your work to find a way to use ChatGPT to do something, you should be trying, because the productivity gains I want to get from my employee base, I want to reinvest in the speed in which we are operating, not reducing my headcount so that I go the same speed I'm going now at a lower cost. And I would tell you, you're going to be replaced if you don't have the skills of AI very soon. Yeah. And so, I think we're almost out of time, but, so that's what I say to the world is, I tell my kids, I have 2 adult kids, you better get your 3 adult kids, excuse me. I'm going to get in trouble for that one later on. Who did I leave out mentally? You better get your head around this, because it's going to be what you do for a living is interact with AI.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you both and the time you put in this, and I appreciate it's amazing. Colgate-Palmolive, just got approval for an AI application worldwide. I can imagine, the effort it took to do that. And then, a progressive networking company like Kimberley is at in Extreme Networks, being very creative with the leadership top down. And I encourage all of you, whether you're business or HR, to go push your company into this as quickly as you possibly can. So much appreciate your time. Riaz, I'll hand it back to you. I'm not sure kind of what's next.
Well, the beautiful thing is we actually have the gift of time for this. We have about 13 minutes left. So I'm going to highlight maybe a couple of comments and then some audience questions. So for those watching, questions in the Q&A, I'm seeing some really thoughtful stuff, but I'll bring this one up first because Alex's comment right here from the chat. I recently read that AI is coming to our jobs versus for our jobs. That was a refreshing shift in perspective. I'm loving this and agree we are amidst a great time to revolutionize many HR systems with technology and reduce cognitive and workload burden. Just a thought from each of you, is the overall feeling, I mean, it's fascinating listening to this discussion, is the overall feeling just a sense of optimism, one for yourself, but optimism with acceptance from your teams that, hey, this is a tool for us to use and it's not here to replace us? Maybe Doug, you could start us off.
Very much so. I think, Riaz, you have to think about it by job too, if you want to be real honest about it. There are jobs that will be replaced by AI that are things that you do repetitively, and you can replace with AI. But what it's going to do, it's going to move everybody in a company to thinking strategically, and also the pace in which you can operate. In the venture world, no money's going anywhere right now but to AI startups. But the irony is the venture world is really scratching its head, because you can build a very significant company with 10 people now. And so you don't need a $40 million Series A investment, you need $3 million. And who's going to be interested in doing $3 million seed rounds? I mean, when you're raising $2 billion, you have to put all that money to work. And so the threat to every company that we're talking to today is someone's going to do what you're doing, and it's going to be born in AI, and you need to AI yourself before you get Borders books by Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Kimberley Bennett, would you like to add to the idea of AI? And we were talking about change enthusiasm even before this chat started, of what you're seeing and feeling in terms of acceptance to the future of AI.
I'll jump in. I'm seeing optimism. Again, we are a technology company that's part of our portfolio is AI solutions, but I'm seeing the optimism. And I think that's because our employees are saying that this is an opportunity to upskill, but also to move more into a strategic space, to Doug's point. I don't think there's a lot of interest in doing tactical work anymore. I think holistically, we're moving towards becoming strategic partners and understanding the business and helping the business drive better outcomes. And I think AI can help us with that and help us move the business forward, which is what we're trying to solve for at the end of the day.
Thanks, Kimberley. Bennett?
Yeah, I'd add, even on a personal note, I'm generally optimistic. Still, have my reservations about Skynet, how that could play out. But that said, yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to change the nature of work, continue to do it. And Doug, I think, nailed it, which is, if for those who are not embracing it and using it, you're essentially going to get left behind. In my teams and the folks that I lead, as we're doing work, we're doing projects, the first thing, what we're talking about is how can we leverage AI to do something like this, right? How we were just talking about careers just the other day. We want to do pathing. All right. Well, how can we take our organizational structure, feed it into an AI model and track movement, track history, and start to create paths, job families associated with those paths, right? Just thinking about it in a different way, which normally would have taken months and a ton of consulting dollars, right, to help accelerate the process. So net, it is who we all are and need to be, and I think it offers us and affords us a bit more time to be strategic and to leverage the softer skills, which I think are going to become increasingly more important as well.
Thanks for that. Bennett, I want to build on that point you're making, because there was an interesting comment and question coming from Erica. And it says, Bennett mentions working together in HR, getting rid of silos. How does that work day to day without losing the specialization of these teams? Your thoughts on that?
I think you could still be specialized, but the idea of being just in talent acquisition or just in total, I think that goes away a little bit. I'd liken it to being more of with the old, HR business partners or HR generalists. You need to know enough about the other areas so that you're constantly scanning and looking for connectivity, right? So you don't need to, as a talent management, person, I guess, I don't need to know everything about total rewards, but I do need to know enough about how we interplay, how we connect to drive more integrated, systems. So this is similar to what HR should be, which is, whether you're in finance, whether you're in legal, whatever it is, at the end of the day, you need to, your business first, function second, right? And I think that type of logic applies within HR to more of the specialized areas within HR as well.
Well, Riaz, I would tell you, I believe that over time, Kimberley built an onboarding application. I think AI in thinking through and developing workflow, we always talk about kind of cradle to grave in HR. Well, AI could lead you through that entire experience. And so it would help connect different organizations that specialize in hiring or learning, or whatever that specialization might be, in a very meaningful way. It's gonna, in my own product, I'm telling my team, why do I need, I want my HR admins to be able to have AI walk it through building their program. Here's what we're going to do first. Here's what we're going to do next. Here's what you need to do third. Boom. Okay, there's your program. Let's roll it out. How often do you want to do it? And what time frame? What do you want the questions to be? We're so early days on the specialties around what can happen.
Mm-hmm. Kimberly, I saw you noting on that one. Anything else you want to add to this one here?
No, Doug just reminded me though that there's so much opportunity that, again, I think we will get stuck in a cycle of just ideation if we don't identify, here's the 2 or 3 things I'm going to go do. And I'm even in thinking about it with my own team, we can get in that cycle of just ideas, but I think getting some things down that you're going to go work on and solve for is critical.
Yeah.
Take your work you've done on the onboarding, Kimberly, and think about it for onboarding new managers. What's the first 90 days that they should go through?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I see another question's coming from Andrea. I'll just bring this up. How do you influence your executive leadership to see the benefit and proceed with embracing AI, even at a basic level? Our organization has halted all AI for now due to concern of risk with proprietary products and work.
Oof. For me, go find a competitor and see how they're using. See if you can find out a way they're using AI, and saying if you don't move, you're going to get left behind. It's unfortunate that the world has lots of different personalities, and some are risk adverse and some aren't. But the person that invented quick story, the person that invented the technology, when it got exposed by Microsoft, when AI opened to Microsoft, there was a big movement in Silicon Valley to sign a 6-month pause on the development of AI. And the founder that invented the technology said, well, now you're just going to give the bad guys a 6-month head start. And that resonated with me. We need to innovate to stay ahead and stay on the safe side of AI and to prevent the bad side of AI. There's a dark web and there's the web we all live in. It's going to happen, but we need to stay ahead of it and not moving to it. Remind them of, my story earlier about Borders Books and Amazon.com.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. Bennett, Kimberly, anything else to add on that one with executive leadership? I know there's been some commentary, but anything you want to use to build on Doug's response?
I think everything needs a compelling business case. I think I would go back to the business case of why AI. And we're from an executive leadership team, that's going to be the bogey, if you will, that helps to move the ball forward, is helping them to understand the value of it. That would be my answer to this one.
Yeah. I think even the to complement that angle, if an executive leadership team is not thinking about it and trying to embrace it, they're losing, right? And they're going to fall behind, and they're not going to be an executive leadership team much for much longer. Because as Doug said, they're just going to get outpaced in the competition.
Somebody made a good comment down here. Make sure that I don't know how you subtly do this, but educate them on the fact that you don't necessarily have to be out in the wild world of AI. You can have an internal AI platform that is only used internally and can remove a lot of the fear for leadership.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
I
think
saw one more comment, Riaz. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go for it, Doug.
I saw another question in there or comment that I think is really special too, and that's the analytics that'll come with this capability.
Yeah.
For HR leaders, you'll be able to see where everything's happening inside the organization in ways you never could before. Analyzing language and data, and so we're thinking long and hard about making sure you have dashboards as leaders of people that'll really help you manage the organization in a more meaningful way than you can do it today.
Measure the metrics for change. Well, listen, we're about to wrap, but let's just open this up for maybe a final thought, a sentence or two about AI, what we discussed today. Kimberley, let's start with you on your future outlook for AI and where we're going.
Yeah, so I would say we embrace. There's a statement that says, "Allow the people to do what people do, and allow the machines to do what machines do." And I think that's what we really need to do. I think AI will up-level us to a point that we'd have the ability to lean into the things that humans do well. And I think there's a lot of tools out there to help even those that are just starting to get things going.
Wonderful. Bennett?
Yeah, no, I think it's bright. I think there's a work component in terms of what we've been talking about here. But I think the more we can encourage, people or employees to adopt to even their personal lives, I think that even helps as well. I have 2 younger kids. I encourage them, and it's 6 and 9. I encourage them to do it. I talk to them about their future and with AI and everything else, and how they're going to move from trying to boss Alexa around all day to actually having other tools that are going to be much more powerful than what Alexa can currently do.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank all 3 of you. Doug, I loved your insights on this as well. Kimberley, Bennett, Doug. For our hundreds watching live right now, let's give them some love in the chat. AI is here to stay, and there's so many innovative ways we can use it to drive our businesses forward. So thank you to all 3 of you.